Excellent. Well, FS2 has entered the waiting room. Who's FS2?
Got two. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thank you all for coming to meet us virtually this afternoon. We'll be going through a short presentation to talk about the early years curriculum, what you can expect for your children this year, and to look at their timetables for the day, as well as a few other bits of information. This will also be recorded and shared with parents that can't make it or have siblings in multiple year groups. So we'll start to share the presentation now, and if you have any questions at all, we'll hopefully get through most of the frequently asked questions, but if there's anything we don't quite cover, if you could email your child's class teacher and we'll do our absolute best to answer that for you. There's another participant. Okay. So, first of all, welcome. This is our early years specific curriculum meeting, which will talk to you a little bit in depth about what your child will be covering this year.
So first things first is just a very brief introduction of ourselves and the staff that your children will be working with throughout the year. The plan would be eventually that your children will get to know all of the staff in foundation stage, but obviously due to social distancing at the moment, we're a little bit limited on that front. So at the moment, it's really on a class basis. So in FS2A, the teacher is Miss Molly Shaw, next to me here. And the teaching assistant is Miss J, who's just here to say hi. And then in FS2B, that's myself, Niall Crispin, the teacher there. And then my teaching assistant is Miss Angeline, who's unfortunately had to go home a little bit earlier today, so she can't say hi. But that is the FS2 team.
Okay, so those are the early years teachers, but we do have specialist teachers that come down to teach certain subjects to early years children. Our music teacher, who is the head of arts, is Miss Anne Peters, so she'll take the children from music. For P, we have Mr. Daniel Mancini. For Mandarin, we have Miss Mason Tan, and which is something that's new to the year this year, is we now have a teacher librarian. So when children go up to the library, they'll have lessons in guided reading, in breadth, in building joy of reading, and that will be a little bit more focused this year. So we also do have art, which will be taught temporarily by class teachers. We are currently actively recruiting for an art-specific teacher, but as primary specialists, we are able to teach art, and we'll be doing so for the next few weeks until we have a specialist art teacher.
Okay, so as we said before, as was covered in the last one, all of the teachers who your child will be engaging with. Obviously, there'll be other teachers who they may have something to do with on a occasional basis. There's also the PE teaching assistant, Ms. Nadia, who a number of the children know, who will be helping out with some of the PE lessons as well. There are our email addresses for you. So if you've got any concerns about anything day-to-day with your child, please feel free as a first port of call to contact myself if your child's in my class, or Miss Short if your child's in Miss Short's class. Obviously, if you want to take it further than that, then it can be escalated further from that. But the first port of call would always be to contact your class teacher with any concerns you may have. Obviously, at the moment, due to the SOP, face-to-face meetings are a little bit difficult.
As you can tell.
As you can tell from that at the moment, how we're in meetings. So the first instance, email us. We can arrange for meetings via Zoom. We can do respond to emails. We make a policy of responding to all emails within 24 hours of you sending them over. So if we haven't, then please feel free to send another email saying you haven't responded, why haven't you responded, and we'll make sure that we can answer our questions. If we can't answer the questions, we can always ask somebody else to, or forward it on to somebody else who can answer your questions as well. We can arrange some face-to-face meetings, but these really it would be up to the teacher to arrange, and they probably ask you for a face-to-face meeting if needed, and then we obviously have to go through certain protocols to do that.
This is a very brief outline of the school day. We will be a little bit later looking at specifics in terms of the timetable for early years and what that looks like for your child. But just a reminder that we are open from 7:30 in the morning, and from 7:45 to 8 a.m. the children will have their register. In primary, everybody has their snack and break at 9 a.m. in the morning, followed by lunch at 11:20. The end of the day from Monday to Thursday at the moment is 2:50, and on a Friday is 1 o'clock. We can't currently run CCAs and after school clubs at this time due to the current SOPs regarding COVID-19, but as soon as we're able to release that and give you some further information, we will, so that your children can be involved in after school clubs and extracurricular activities.
So this is just a basic outline of a timetable. Don't take any pictures or anything of it at the moment. We did send home your specific timetables yesterday, but as you can see, the day's broken up into a number of different periods throughout the day in which we will be focusing on a certain task. So obviously we've got phonics in the morning, then in most cases we will follow that with literacy, and then you've got some specialist lessons there as well. Maths, fairly self-explanatory. Library is when they go to the library. I'll answer a few questions about some of these other areas which you may not be particularly familiar with. So with carousel, that's our opportunity to do what we'd call a focused task. So that would be something that we're really focusing in on specifics with a child, and we're working with them with that. So the teacher would be really focused with a specific group with that. While that's happening, it gives the children an opportunity and the TA to work on other tasks as well. And then that would go round the class. The challenges would go around the class. So everybody would get a chance of doing different challenges, usually over 2 days, so that everyone gets a good chance and a good amount of time to do those. In terms of outdoor learning, that's our opportunity to really let off a bit of steam, to get outside and to do our learning outside, really. We will take other learning outside. Literacy and maths we may take outside for specific reasons, but outdoor learning is a chance for us really to engage those gross motor skills particularly. And then the personal, social and emotional development. It's really hard at the moment because obviously due to the SOP, the children can't engage on a social level as they normally would. And so we're having to do lots and lots of games where we're trying to get the children to socialize, but at a safe distance, which in itself, socially distanced, makes social, personal, social, emotional development very difficult. So that's why we've got a specific time for that. Obviously, if you've got any other questions about any of those other slots, please feel free to send us an email about those.
Okay, we're going to delve in a bit deeper now to the curriculum, what we cover in school. We use the British curriculum and follow the English Early Years Foundation Stage curriculum. However, I would like to express that that's really a springboard for what we do. It gives us a backbone, a structure, which we can then extend upon. Within that, that's the statutory framework in England. It covers all the areas of learning, how we assess the children, and the safeguarding and welfare requirements as well. We do also use something called development matters, which pulls apart each area of learning, which we'll look at in a moment, into more detail, and tells us exactly what that looks like in a child, how we can help promote it, and how we can engage the children in each stage.
Okay, so we've got the main principles that underpin how a child works here. And as I'm sure you're all aware, every child is unique. And that is something that we really focus in on and make sure that the learning that we then tailor towards them is suitable to them and has their interests. And as a result, we get the same outcomes out of the children, but we might use different approaches in order to do that. So we're treating each child as a unique individual. We've got to build positive relationships in order to do that. Obviously, children aren't going to be forthcoming about their wants, needs, interests, and everything else if we don't have that positive two-way relationship with them. So that's really important as part of that. And then the third part is the enabling environment, and that's having an environment in which children are free to express their interests and are able to take their learning in the directions that they want, but also allows us to be able to question and steer some of the learning that the children are taking part in. So it's all very important. All three of those parts come together in our approach and how we help the children in their own learning and their development throughout the year. Obviously, due to the SOP at the moment, the enabling environment one is particularly difficult, but we are trying very hard in what we give the children in their trades on a daily basis to make sure that they get a variety of things to explore and to express themselves through that.
So the areas of learning, seven of them within our curriculum. The prime areas really underpin everything that we do. If the prime areas aren't secure, the specific areas might fall along the wayside. So we have three prime areas: personal, social and emotional development, communication and language, and physical development. These are broken down further. For example, communication and language encompasses listening and attention, understanding and speaking. A child really has to have a secure foundation in those in order to build upon the specific areas in which we have literacy, which is split between reading and writing, maths, which is number, shape, space and measure, expressive arts and design, and understanding the world, which is early science. So through the specific areas, the prime areas will be enhanced and consolidated to make sure the children are really secure there. For example, in literacy, if they're reading or writing, they'll really need to have a good grasp of understanding for comprehension in communication language. They'll need the physical development of fine motor to be able to influence their writing. Even maths is influenced greatly by communication and language. They'll have to understand mathematical terms and concepts before they can move into the specific areas in a bit more depth.
So obviously, with characteristics of effective learning are almost like the second part of what we're doing. So you've got those 7 areas of learning. The characteristics of effective learning are what children may exhibit in what they're doing and how they are learning, and their particular interests in particular areas in which they are learning and how they're understanding what they're doing. So playing and exploring, as it says there, it's how children engage with and experience and investigate what they're doing. And active learning is how they concentrate and how they persist with an activity, particularly when they're encountering difficulties. And then critical thinking and creating is how they then take those ideas and develop them further and observe as well, really. It's like observation skills as well. So they're looking at how things have changed, what they could do differently and how that can influence an outcome.
Yes, and the curriculum, the areas of learning are what. The characteristics are really how we'd like the children to learn. And that's something that's wonderful, and why we love early is we can build behaviours for learning in terms of, are they resilient, are they independent, can they problem solve, can they think critically, and those really are behaviours that will put them in good stead for the remainder of their education. And so a really important part of what we do. So the school year and overview, at the end of this week, you will receive the long-term plan, which gives you the objectives that the children will be working toward within each term. We'll also send to you a medium-term plan, which will outline for this half term what your child will be doing in class. Now that will give you objectives, things that they're working towards in each area. So through all these areas of learning, we like to combine it into a topic. Now, these aren't restrictive. If a cohort is really interested in something, we'll try to run with that as much as we can and incorporate their interests. But within term one, the first half term is all about me, which is really about us getting to know the children. We do a lot about family, birthdays, what they were like when they were younger compared to now. We then go on to weather and colour. In term two, we look at food and the scientific process of really how food begins to change and what changes mean in different states. We then look at transport, and for us that's space, which is usually a very, very popular one. In term three, we look at growth in terms of plants and change, and then we go on to living things, which is under the sea. We do a little bit of pirates as well, which is always very interesting. But this isn't restrictive at all. If we find that a couple of children are really interested in something, we'll always try to incorporate that into the planning. And we do have the freedom in early years to have the flexibility to do that, which is wonderful.
All right, so it's a big scary word, assessment, especially when we're talking about a 4 or 5-year-old child, and it is honestly nothing to worry about in terms of your child is not going to pass or fail the year or anything like that. But how we monitor a child and how we plan for a child and make sure that they, what we're doing is engaging and we're hitting the right notes effectively with your child, is through constantly assessing them. And that just comes through observation, basically. So we're observing the children at all times, and then we use that information to inform where we think a child is and how we can challenge their next steps and how they can then build on that. So that all goes into a profile, which is available on Tapestry, which is something I'm sure we'll cover later. And it just gives us a point of reference, really, to make sure that we are making sure that the children are progressing at the right level and the right stage, basically. Really, yeah.
And early years is a 2-year running program. So they have 2 years to develop. If they had a test at the end of FS1, children develop at such different rates, especially if they've come into a year group where one's the eldest, one's the youngest, they'll be at completely different stages within their development. And the profile we do at the end of FS2 is just really to assess their readiness of year one. It's not a sit-down test, it's not formalised in any way. It takes into account all the observations we've taken every single week from the year and the progress they're making. Now, I'm sure a few of you who are with us in FS1 will know all about Tapestry. Tapestry is an online learning journey. It's a platform we use to share with you what your child is doing in school, the progress they're making, and the next steps that we're looking forward to when we plan for the week ahead. It isn't a day in the life of my child at school, and we do really try to make what we capture significant to their learning, to show things they've not done before, a new skill, something they've really consolidated, to give us great evidence when moving forward. The observations, as I've said, will go all the way through the year. Every half term, we have a look at where the children are, see if there's particular groups that might need an intervention, how we can push children to make sure that they exceed. And then in the first 2 weeks of school, we'll also be doing a baseline assessment. Now, this is not a formalised test at all. It's us getting to know your child, gathering as much information as we can, especially as some children have been off school for quite some time. so we can really know that we can hit the ground running and start with their next steps straight away. So those will be taken by observations last week and this week. And on Friday, we'll begin to make all the observations available to new parents and new students who haven't got a login just yet. I would like to say as well, to those of you in FS1, we saw such a wealth of information coming through during the MCO period with distance learning, and we really would like to keep up the momentum with that. It's been fantastic to see what the children are learning at home. So if you could also add observations, we can go more through that with new parents soon. That really helps us. It doesn't have to be too academic, even just something they've achieved at home. They've got a new swimming badge, they've seen grandma at the weekend and wrote her a birthday card. Something as small as that can be something we can share in class to really build homeschool relationships and for us to know your children, hopefully, a little bit better as well as you do.
Okay, so preparing your child for school. This is just a very brief outline in terms of the things that your child may need in terms of coming into school. So as it currently stands, a mask is a must for obvious reasons. Extra masks are a good idea because they do have a tendency for the bands and things to snap on them. Water bottle, every child needs to bring a water bottle into school so that they can drink throughout the day at their own leisure, basically. We try and build that in as independently as possible. We're not always reminding the children, we will remind them, but it's up to them really to have a drink throughout the day. It's really important that all items are labelled because you'd be surprised where we find things throughout the year. Obviously, sleep is really, really important. Children at this age in particular is the age at which they develop the most in the shortest amount of time, and the time we are developing, the time we're growing, the time we're refreshing, a lot of that time is during our sleep. So it's really important that children are getting as much sleep as possible. In terms of snacks and lunches, obviously at the moment, it's all taken care of by school due to the SOPs, but should we get to a stage soon where parents are allowed to send in their own children's lunches and snacks, we'd ask that you try your hardest to make sure that it's a healthy and balanced lunch and snack for the children, just so that they can maintain their energy. The sugar's really good for giving us energy and a boost for like a short amount of time, but then you have the crash straight afterwards, and no child can really concentrate in a maths lesson after they've had a sugar crash, really. So giving them food that can give you long sustained energy would be key to that. Obviously, eating breakfast is part of that as well. So as long as they've eaten breakfast, they've got that energy, they're going to be able to concentrate and focus for longer during the first part of the day. As you can see from the pictures there, that's an example of uniform. Obviously, our uniform is slightly different in that we wear a navy blue t-shirt, but we've asked that the children come in like that on a normal school day. And then the PE kit is for those days when PE is scheduled on the timetable. So currently that's on a Monday and a Thursday. If you do send your child in a sweater, we would ask that they are a black sweater or a black cardigan or navy blue, just in keeping with the rest of the school's uniform policy, really. The school uniform shop is currently very close to getting restocked, if not restocked, if you are waiting for an official GEMS one. That's not us telling you to go and buy those, but should you wish to, you can. And then we also ask that every child has some spare clothing in their locker. That's just in case there's a toileting accident or we do something that's particularly messy that day. Obviously, we try our hardest to make sure that children don't get overly messy on their uniform, but unfortunately accidents do occasionally happen. So it just gives us something to change them into. We ask at the moment, due to the school's SOP, that our children don't bring any bags or backpacks in. They're not required at the moment. So if you do have a bag or backpack, please encourage your child to maybe leave them at home at the moment, because all they really need at the moment is just to walk in with a water bottle. That's the main thing they need. What was it? And then also black shoes. We understand that some of you may have bought new shoes at the start of the year that aren't black. So we'd ask that the next set you buy, please try and make sure they're black. Black trainers are fine, but no flashing lights in those either.
Okay, so our last slide is talking a little bit about what the SOPs are. I know that parents were sent quite a long document that was a lot to understand and unpick. And the school must meet all standard operating procedures in the current COVID-19 regulations. These are different for older children in primary. So quite a lot of us are thinking, well, why can primary bring this and they can't bring this to school? Unfortunately, they are slightly different. So we do strictly follow these procedures set out in the school's policy. Currently, children cannot share resources and they must remain 1 metre apart at all times. So due to these restrictions, we can't have free flow play as we normally know it. However, we are thinking of very creative solutions to how we can make sure the children are engaged, they've got access to all the areas of learning. And as things begin to relax, we're hoping that we can introduce more and more choice. At the moment, the children are now able to be sat distant, but in groups, so we can do group work. We also ensure that when we're planning, we think of quite creative solutions for how we can express something or an area of learning that might be quite restricted in these SOPs. So every day the children have everything they need, all the resources for the day ready to go, sanitized in a box for them, so that way they won't be sharing resources there.
So that's the end of the presentation there. Just like to say a massive thank you for sticking with us for that. There's a lot of information on board. Like we say, we have recorded this and we would look for a way of sharing that with you soon. If there are any other questions, the idea would now be if you could just email those to us and then we can make sure that we get the right information for your specific questions and email that back to you. And yeah, so just thanks very much for joining us and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon and evening.
And I must say as well, we've been incredibly impressed with how the children have settled so far. They've dealt with things fantastically and we're very much looking forward to helping them progress through their early years. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thanks. Bye.